after being treated for dehydration, former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams, he was charged $5,000. And that's after his insurance was kicked in.
Oh my gosh, this is why 100 million Americans are in medical debt, why medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy.
Private equity firms are increasingly getting involved more and more. Some say they're putting profits ahead of people.
Today, it's estimated over 40% of the nation's emergency departments are overseen by for-profit staffing companies. These Wall Street firms look for a return on their investments on a shorter timeline.
And then all of a sudden, you get this nasty letter from a collection agency that we're going to garnish your wages.
Stay in communication, stay in conversation. Most people don't like to talk to bill collectors.
No.
Believe it or not, bill collectors don't like to talk to bill collectors.
Dr. Jerome Adams was a successful and respected anesthesiologist, a leader in his field. And in 2017, he got the top honor. He was picked by the President of the United States to be the next Surgeon General, America's top doctor. He served his 4-year term. He went back to private practice. And he was on a business trip with some coworkers doing a team building. They were on a hike in Phoenix. While on the hike, the young doctor, in great shape, only 50 years old at the time, started getting dizzy and said, uh-oh. But practicing what he preached, he checked himself in the ER. All he was dehydrated. So they gave him an IV, gave him a clean bill of health, and sent him on his way. A month later, he's sitting at his desk and he gets a bill for that ER visit. He opens it up and it reads $4,896. And then he rolled his eyes and said, "This must be another billing mistake. One call from me will clear this up." In his head, being a doctor and being in and out of hospitals and working in hospitals for years, he knew a bill like this would probably be about $400 to $700 at the most. But as he started the process of calling, he was shocked at how time-consuming and taxing it was. After trying to swim through this so-called professionals in the healthcare field, he was starting to wear himself out. It was time-consuming and taxing, and it was raising his cortisol. It was also raising his blood pressure. The KFF, an independent source for health policy research and news, did a study with 36 adults. And what they found is people are so scared to go to the doctors because of lack of transparency, not knowing what they're going to pay. They wait until it becomes an absolute emergency before they go in. Medical bills are the top cause of bankruptcy in the U.S. 100 million citizens have said that they flat out can't pay their doctor bills. 51% of the population with these high bills aren't clear about what they're actually paying for. 80% of the bills that go out to patients have mistakes. 80%. But what's absolutely not funny about that is the majority of the errors favor not us. They favor the hospitals. This has created a sub-industry for attorneys. And believe it or not, their only practice is to fight for people against our healthcare system. Imagine you're having a health crisis, but you're more afraid of financial ruin for you and your family than you are of the heart attack or cancer.
I looked it up. Apparently there's no such thing as just medical bankruptcy.
Really?
Yeah. Which is funny because there's like, how many types of bankruptcy are there?
Oh, you mean just that they categorize as that?
Right, like the chapters. There's
There's
like
chapter 7, there's chapter 13, and there might be some other chapters I don't know about.
there's family farmer bankruptcy, municipal bankruptcy, liquidation under bankruptcy code. It is, but the one of the top Google searches, which tells you something about our country, is one of the absolute top searches is medical bankruptcy in quotes. So many people are looking up how to go bankrupt because of medical debts. People think it's an actual term.
That's amazing. Well, when I was in the auto finance and I was an underwriter, so I did make loan decisions, we would look at credit differently if you could see the collections from, and then at certain banks I was at, we'd actually ignore collections from the medical field. They wouldn't go against their scoring because they were so prevalent.
Oh wow, holy
Yeah,
shit.
so you have people with 700 credit scores, and they have these charge-offs, and some of them were judgments against their credit, and you could see they paid everything. They paid their mortgage on time. They paid their credit cards, had no balances, but that it was just they were hit with a huge bill for them or one of their kids, and they couldn't fit the bill.
I think I used to blame the individual for this. Like when you started reading this, I was like, okay, well, this is a rich guy that can afford it. And then when I started looking into this as an episode, I kept sort of coming at this with the eye of like, why don't these people have good insurance? Why don't these people plan ahead and have like a safety net? Like everybody should keep, what is it, like 3 months worth of your salary in the bank at all times for just safety net. And that's kind of like very generic financial advice you basically get it, when you first take a financial
Right.
class.
But your car breaks down, medical bill.
Right. But the shocking statistic that, you know, a quarter of all adults have medical bills that they're currently saddled under. Not that they have at some point had a medical bill, but that a quarter of us just have medical bills right now that are unpayable. That is such a high number. I don't think it's possible to blame an individual. Like I don't know if there's a threshold for that. Like if 10 or 15% of us are alcoholics, then we can blame the individual. We can say it's a lack of willpower, or it's a lack of something. Like it's not something we have to really solve, because you can say that the person did it to themselves. At what point, percent wise, is it, we're not bad planners, we're not putting the blame on somebody who can't make that safety net. We now realize that it's a systemic issue, and that hospitals are doing this.
Well, I gave this talk to two separate groups of people before I didn't. And how dare you say I read that? How dare you? That's off the top of my head. But I gave this to two groups of people. Now, one of them was healthcare professionals. They were all nurses. And the other one was it was a Toastmaster group. It was just a mixed group of mostly educated people. What shocked me about it was, for starters, with the educated group, the people that got most upset about this were the wealthier people.
Yeah.
And then every single one of the nurses was mad about it, and not in a defensive way, but in, you're absolutely right. Thank you for talking about this, because I'm sure they've been gotten the phone calls and having to deal with patients who don't want to come in until it's too late, when
Yeah.
they want to be healers and helpers.
Have you had that experience yet where you have had a medical issue or crisis and you've thought, I don't want to go in because you don't know what you're going to pay? It's not even that there used to be a time where, like, with insurance, you would know you were going to be out a significant amount of money. You'd pay like $1,000 or something to go to an ER, or maybe 500 if you had really good insurance, but you would still go because it's your health. You don't fool around with that. Now, because it's such a crapshoot, have you had the experience where you just decide not to go?
Yes, and I've had the experience where I've been misled by what my insurance will cover. And that was even worse. So that made me even more gun shy about it, because I went in and they said, you've got great insurance. It covers this, this, this. And it turns out it didn't.
Yeah.
And I called back and said, well, you told me it did. And you said, because of this, you called and checked and it didn't. And it's just the old, they put their arms up in the air and say, there's nothing we can do. And I just really felt low. What about you?
I had a recent, I had almost the exact same situation where I had a bout of high blood pressure that made me extremely dizzy. And I've had that for years. Like I'll have a bad month out of the year or something. My blood pressure will be high. And what you do during that time is you go to the hospital. Like if it is, I'm not, what do you call it? I'm not somebody who expects the ER to solve my problems. I do get preventative care. I go to my doctor once a month, once every other month or something, whatever he needs to find out from me how my blood pressure is doing. I'm very careful. I exercise every day. I eat a very green, balanced diet. Um, and when it gets really bad, I have been told just go in because you'll need to be rehydrated. You'll need to be checked out. They just need to make sure you're doing okay when it's really bad. Um, and probably up until now, it's always been pretty consistent with the cost. It is just going in and having somebody sort of look you over. And this time I got an IV for being dehydrated, which that can cause high blood pressure. Um, and it's the same story as our Surgeon General. It was I got an IV. They gave me an estimate at the hospital that was about $1,000, which I expected. And then after releasing me about a month later, I got a bill for almost $6,000.
Whoa.
Um,
So this is not Dr. Adams here. This is Dr. Joe Anthony, honorary doctor.
right? Yeah.
So this is how the episode started. Joe called me saying, he's calmed down about it, but he wasn't calm when he called me about it. You know, he was using all kinds of new swear words I haven't heard before, because you were just like, again, you have been through this process before.
Yeah.
You are well insured. You've had health problems, and that helps, right? Experience helps in everything, or at least it should.
Yeah,
Right?
I was not being uncautious, and I was mad at the time because I knew that something fishy was up. Like even their estimate that they handed me at the hospital matched my expectations, and I would have been very happy paying it for their services, but that's not how it went.
So how did it make you feel, and what happened?
I vowed revenge. I started making threats at the staff. No, I'm kidding. That people really do that. Like when you talk about these nurses who you give this speech to, and they react with shock and anger. There is like a Baltimore hospital that has made they don't let their nurses and staff get health care elsewhere. The way they're covered, they have to go to their own hospital, and then they do the exact same thing to them. They will overcharge them, and they will sue them as a matter of course. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Today's episode isn't just about complaining about the financial woes of hospitals in America. We actually want to do a step by step on how do you solve this. What can you do to fight a medical bill? What is the process and steps? How difficult is it? How do you do it when you're not a lawyer? That's something. I was able to find this information out because I'm a careful Googler and I have a investigator's license, which sucks that you have to be that persistent
Well, yeah.
to get through this.
And that's what I was thinking about. You know, we don't all have the energy or the aptitude to figure this out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not everybody. The Attorney General is struggling with it. It's like,
So
but please,
yeah.
you'll make it simple for us, right?
Right, exactly. We'll provide resources. I have a very, very good step-by-step website that walks you through this process, and this is what your representation would do if you hired someone to do this for you. You can find out how much money you have to owe before somebody is willing to take your case, so you can hand it off to somebody else. But if you're like me and you only owe, in quotes, you only owe about 5 or 6 thousand, then it's going to be up to you. Most people won't come to that defense. They will if you have multiple hyper expensive bills, and if you fall into like a need category, like you're the elderly or something. Which I was shocked to find out that this medical billing problem, it actually is more common with younger folks.
Yeah, the first thing I thought was that there was some kind of predatory thing going on. I thought they're picking on people of a certain race in certain areas, economics or something. I really did. I was that
Right.
paranoid about it because
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. And I think I'm on that list.
I thought
You know?
I was getting some blowback from elderly abuse. Like I thought it was something where they've gotten used to preying on the large elderly, boomer population.
Right. And then with the blood pressure that threw you in that bucket, right? They're like,
Exactly,
oh,
yeah. But that's not the case. The the 25% of adults, they're the under the age of 65 category. So like that, if you add the elderly who are getting gouged with their medical bills, that number goes up. So I don't know why this particular study made that separate. They called it 25% of working adults, but I know lots of people over 65 that work, so that's not completely fair. Um, okay, so first we want to answer, why is this happening nationwide? Why is this happening everywhere to everyone? Like it used to be maybe you'd have a crooked hospital here and there, or it used to be really somebody actually wasn't planning ahead and setting up their safety net properly. That's why they would get hit. But it has become a systemic practice for hospitals to both overcharge and to gouge, which are two different things. And it is also becoming a regular practice to do this as a matter of course. Hospitals now have almost like a set date, or like an automatic system where they will send you to collections or to a lawsuit. Um, and some hospitals are actually, they prefer that because they know that if you're going to fight it, or if you're going to sleep on it, or if you're going to try to like slowly pay out or something, or anything that isn't just them getting their vast amount of money quickly, they know that it is better to get that money from a debtor and then send a debtor after you, or at least get a portion of that money from a debtor immediately. So it's becoming standard practice, and part of that is because there have been two big factors that lead to this: are hospital mergers. Just the same thing is happening with basically everything in corporate America, which is more monopolies, more hospitals have merged. Here in the area I'm in, the Austin area, there's only two major hospitals left, and they're fighting it out. I would name them, but there's no point. Same thing with Oregon. It's Kaiser or it is Providence. Here it's a duopoly. There's a couple states where it's a full monopoly, where there are counties where like you literally only have you have one choice of hospital. And the other factor in this is, have you heard of the sort of private equity snowball that's happening right now?
No, what's that?
We might someday do an episode on this. We're a self-help podcast. We don't want to get into strictly economic issues, but private equity is anything that isn't traded on the stock market.
Okay.
So private equity is you and I start a firm and we decide that, yeah,
like the prison system, right? They do private
yeah,
prisons kind of thing is what I can think of.
exactly. You and I don't trust putting all of our money in orange juice, like what was that? Trading Places, the Eddie Murphy movie about stock markets.
Commodities, yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to put it into orange juice commodities like that movie. We decide to put all of our money into private equity, which means we invest in a private business. But the way we invest is we give them a massive loan that they have to pay back, and we invest very little of our own money into it. Like they mostly are paying off the loan themselves, and then we close them down. Like that, the plan of most private equity ownership is, if you invest in a hospital, you're not investing in a hospital to keep it afloat and build business and make them better. You are giving them a massive loan that they are gambling on their ability to pay back. Almost always what happens when a hospital is taken over by private equity firms, they have to lay off about 10% of their people or more. Um, and when they take on that massive loan, sometimes it's out of desperation, like that hospital was struggling, that's why they took such a massive loan from a private equity firm in the first place. But sometimes it's just because they're greedy. Like the owners are like, oh look, I can siphon a tremendous amount of this $3 billion loan coming my way. um, the hospital is going to have to pay back as much as 90% of it, but they won't be there for it. So like it's again, we may eventually do a private equity episode, but if it's more the monopoly thing, there are monopolies forming with hospitals, and then on the side, here and there are hospitals being saddled under private equity debt, and leveraged buyouts. That's what happens at the end of private equity. Is a business will be bought out by the people who put them into debt, and then they just close it. Like it's just money in the bank. Um, so with hospitals kind of like succumbing to these two models, like not all of them do, but even if you are a survivor during a monopoly takeover, like say I am a hospital and I'm a small operation here in like, rural Austin, if a bunch of hospitals around me get bought up by a single company and I don't, that means I now have to compete with a upcoming monopoly. I have to
Right.
participate in a duopoly and
Against
get
their
competitive.
marketing, against their locations, and that's not, yeah. It's
Right.
great for us, the patients, because then the price will be controlled, right? Because supply and demand control the price.
Right. So even if you are an honest organization, you will have to dig deep money wise to stay alive against that. So like honest hospitals can get into overbilling, gouging, and errors. Um, and now's a good time to actually go over what those are and how much it accounts for.
I want to speak to the price gouging and explain this because I have a in my industry I can complain something very similar. So when you hear the price gouging, you think what? People aren't going to pay if they're being charged 10 times what it's worth. Like the doctor, like you put your foot down and you don't pay, and that's what 99%. This is very similar to what's happened in the construction business. In the construction business, I'm talking about service business where you go work at someone's house for an individual person. What it used to be is you find out what the competition, the high and the low, and you be somewhere in the middle. You be competitive. But
Yeah.
what the construction does now is they get as many leads as they can. They bid them sky high, price gouge them, because a certain amount of people will just pay. And that's exactly what's going here. You're thinking, no, a lot of people do just pay because they give up. And they're
Right.
afraid of their credit. They're also afraid of losing this resource that's keeping them alive when you get older people. So there's actual fear that this is
Right.
keeping them on this earth. So it's pretty scary.
It's I 100% agree with you. It's one of those things where I mean, like we're as a country right now. I don't want to get into like a pro or con regulation rant right now, but we're getting to the point where housing is going fairly unregulated. Before we start recording, Todd and I were talking about a follow up to our last housing episode, and that of all places, very capitalist red state Texas is talking about putting regulations in place for private investors buying out single family homes, because there are several counties here. If you want to look at our last episode about this, there are lots of counties where the houses, the single family homes that are being built, more than half of them are being bought up by private investments, and then they are being turned into very high priced rentals. And they're not classy. It's not gentrification. It's just here is a house they built. It's pretty normal. It should go to a couple who want to have a kid. Instead, it goes to a corporation that charges $3,000 a month. Um, this is happening in all of the fields that involve need. It's you need to live. Well, we're going to figure out what those components are and try to charge you as much as possible for it. And that is just a lack of regulation. Greg Abbott, the extremely Republican governor here, is looking into regulation and is pushing for it now, which I thought I would never see in my lifetime. Um, but hospitals are going to need the same thing because we'll just sort of go through these one at a time. Let's talk gouging first, because you brought up that is a perfect example of what gouging normally looks like. It's a bunch of people bid. They all bid high. It's almost like price fixing, but it's done ad hoc. Like it's done in a bidding system. And then the poor person who ends up buying the service pays the most. Another version of price gouging is you already get the service. So somebody comes to your home, they build a chimney or they put in a fixture or something, and the amount they quoted, it doubles or triples when they give you the bill, and they say it's because there were complications, and there might be legit complications sometimes, um, but oftentimes it is just tacked onto the bill. To give you an example, in the medical system, what I found in my bill, the one I'm currently fighting, they tacked on something called it's a plus 25, or it is a what is it called? Hold on, got it here. Yeah, it's they just put in with 25. So like it said medical IV W/25. And in hospital coding, that means they performed an extra service beyond what was going to save my life. And I put "save my life" in air quotes because that's the other part that they got wrong, is they billed me for a with 25 bill usually looks like you go to the doctor, you complain that your foot is broken, and then while he's doing things with your foot and checking on you, you also say, "Oh, completely unrelated. I've been having headaches lately, and can you look at that too?" That is a proper way to bill somebody twice for one visit by adding a with 25 bill. For
But
me, it was yeah. Go ahead.
let me speak to this too. And I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, but we're both getting complicated. I have a family friend, and she's by trade, she's an RN, and she worked in hospitals and patient care for a decade. And then she moved over to the insurance side. So they have the insurance companies so the doctors check your insurance. They see on there that Joe gets this for a broken leg, right? He gets an x-ray, he gets this, and then they send it in. These RNs then will, before they send that check out to the doctors to pay for it, they're going to look at things and make sure they do everything by the book and do everything by the way they want to. And they save the insurance company billions of dollars. And they say it's for false billing, but a lot of it is to limit their losses. So there's people with, PhD doctors and nurses with patient care who know how to kind of wiggle. To me, seems like a wiggling out process.
Right.
So they don't just send it in and stamp it, as was what I thought they would do, right?
No, the bill is completely finessed, and we'll talk about why you want to get an itemized bill and why you want to pick it apart. Another version of gouging is just material. This is one that I think people have probably heard of the most. It's like there are CNN evening like breakthrough sort of like every once in a while people will get on the news and complain that somebody charged me $500 for a single aspirin tablet, or a hospital gave you the little socks with the grippy things on the bottom, and that was the $400 pair of socks that you didn't need. um, and sometimes it's rooms. Sometimes it's they charge you for a Saturday room at an ER that is busy, but in reality you showed up on a Tuesday that was quiet and you got one of the normal rooms, and suddenly the price is $3,000 more. So the way the gouging happens is it is usually for what they are charging you for is changed slightly to double dip. In my case, it was literally double dipping. They added on the with 25 because the doctor talked about my blood pressure, and he also happened to talk about like some other stuff that was in my chart or that I had complaints about, but it wasn't something. They were things that my doctors were aware of and were already working on. He didn't need to do anything about, but because he mentioned them in his chart or addressed them verbally for 2 seconds, they decided to double or triple my bill. Um, and that really seems like that's what happened with our narrative subject, the Surgeon General. That really feels like that's what happened to him. um, Another reason. Oh, by the way, price gouging accounts for 150 billion a year. Um, so that's probably the largest number we're going to hear as far as like cheating people, and that is the one where you can catch it. The fun part is the one that is the most expensive and will catch the most people, and hospitals are the most egregious of. That's the one where you can actually get an itemized bill and you can see it for your own eyes, which is very nice. Um, the other one that is more difficult to fight is incorrectly denied insurance. This is when you go to a hospital for heart palpitations or heart problems. The hospital treats you for it and says, "Oh, you're not having a heart attack; it is indigestion," um, which is no joke. That can mess you up, and it can, cause a lot of problems if you don't address it. But then your insurance looks at it and says, "Oh, you went to the hospital for indigestion? Like you didn't take a Tums tablet? How dare you?" And they will deny you insurance. So you can show up for something, and if it doesn't fall within the insurance's purview of things that are worthy of an ER visit, then the insurance will sometimes deny you.
People don't faint like they used to. You know, you used to get bad news and you would faint. You know,
I miss that.
I know. I'm telling you, the they get $6,000 for an IV. Just for the record, I go to a place and get IVs for my health and wellness, one of those anti-aging places, and that's $150. So it's just to put it in. And I know hospitals have a lot of overhead. I know that they do, but I'm getting it from a nurse or a doctor when I go there too. So
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into how much these things really are, because I can absolutely guarantee the hospital is not they're not buying an IV bag for $3,000, and they're not buying little grippy foot socks for $400. Luckily we actually have numbers on all this stuff. You can look up how much it costs them for things. That's part of the process of fighting them. And that's our third reason. By the way, incorrect denied insurance accounts for about $63 billion in overcharges to people. The last one is hospital billing error. Um, Now the billing error is an interesting one. They also did this to in my case, but it is the less common of these three. It only accounts for 46 billion, and it happens when you are billed for a different type of service than what you got. For my billing error, they gave me, they claimed my visit was a stage 5, which is basically you get in a car wreck and you're dying. Like you come in
you're
and without,
bleeding out, right?
yeah, without
Fight or flight.
intervention, yeah, you are going to die without intervention is what a stage 5 is. I
I
was
don't see you.
billed at a stage 5.
I don't even see you being that dramatic. You just kind of sit there and wait your turn. You don't really. You're not really. Oh no! Oh poor me! I'm
Oh no,
dying.
yeah, no, they gave
Were
me an,
you? I mean, tell me the
no.
story. Were you? Were you just sitting there like?
I'll
Wow,
post a
stage five.
picture. They gave me an IV, and while I had the IV in, my fiance and I were playing Switch, like we were playing video
Okay.
games. Like we
So
did not.
they weren't saying all clear like on ER. Those are emergency rooms. All
No,
clear.
there's no crash cart. Yeah, I wish if they just gave me that validated my sense of drama by doing that
Yeah.
around me, I may pay them.
Dr.
But
Johnson, stat to the emergency
right,
room. Famous writer Joe Anthony is here. We can't lose him.
be taking a selfie while they do it. Um, so all these told, and you can get hit with all three of these, by the way. Like I got hit with 2 out of 3, and it put my bill up to an extreme amount. You can get hit with all of these, and you can end up paying a $50,000 bill for something that wasn't life threatening. Um, so the we're going to go through this step by step. How do you fight one of these bills, and what do you normally do? Um, as Todd mentioned, it's exhausting. The step 0, or maybe step point 0.5 before we get into the actual steps, is just to be ready for something that you're going to be doing for a couple of months, and that you're going to check in on it every 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, this is not switching from AT&T wireless to Verizon. This is going
Right.
to be a process. Yeah, and it's important you set that up
Yeah.
because you'll get frustrated and quit otherwise, and just get angry and upset and tax your mental health and your physical health as well.
Right. And it's a legit question to start with when you do this, which is ask yourself, is this worth my time in dollars? Like think about how much you get paid per hour. Think about how many calls you're going to have to make to the medical system. Think about how many bills you're going to have to look at and what you're going to have to do to read all this, and decide for yourself, am I willing to do this for a couple of months? And am I willing to put my time into this, or should I just pay it? For
Well,
me,
yeah,
because I'm
and if it's on the
yeah,
large side, is it time to reach out to one of those specialty attorneys we talked about? If it's in the big, the 100,000 or whatever the range is.
right, exactly. So now I'm going to first give a shout out. If you do decide to go with representation, there's a really awesome site we're going to link to that has all of these steps. It has way more information than we can cover in an episode. And they make it simple. You walk through it. It's called resolvemedicalbills.com. We're going to link off to their guide section on how to fight a medical bill. But if you just go to their main website, they will give you an estimate on whether or not you should seek representation. There are nonprofit groups that do this, and there are lawyers that do this. You can do either one. Some of the nonprofit ones only work for the elderly. Some of the nonprofit ones only work for people that are destitute or facing serious medical problems. A lawyer, depending on how bad your case is, they may take it, they may not. That kind of depends, by county and area. Um, but step point 5 is determine if this is worth having somebody do it for you. Determine if this is worth doing it for your time. Um, Go
It's
ahead.
funny because neither one of us in our core values believes in more government control on anything or hire an attorney. Those things are not the way we even think, but because this is just it's just such a big mountain to climb. It's like I think you have to have all hands on deck, right?
I started this podcast with you wanting to just talk about history and self-help. I did not want every 8th episode to be about the housing crisis or the medical crisis, but doing this at least lets people have like a walkthrough step by step. Like it's very valuable to cover this stuff. I wish we lived in. I never thought I would say this, but I wish there was better regulation for these kind of things. When it becomes so systemic that like, half of all millennials can't get houses, and half of or a quarter of everyone can't pay their medical bill right this moment. Like, it is such a ubiquitous problem at that point that regulation might be appropriate then. Um, but yeah, so determine whether or not you want to fight it. If you do, the steps aren't that difficult and they aren't that complex. You just have to be patient, because a lot of these are going to be sort of a waiting game. It is a staring contest with the hospital at every damn step. So step 1, learn how to read a hospital bill. And I say this laughing because I really didn't know. Like I have looked over hospital bills in the past, and they seem to have changed. Like they seem to get more complicated every year. Um, but there's a couple of main sections you need to learn. This website we mentioned points it out. It's how to look at billed charges, what your insurance adjustment is, what your insurance payout is going to be, or their payment amount, and then what the patient's portion is going to be. Once you know how to look at those 4 things, you have your groundwork done, and that's something short you can do in an afternoon, and then you can set it aside for a day. Like that can be your day. That can be your step 1. Um, you don't have to push in. Like you don't have to try to rush to get all this done. It's not going to be that quick. So buckle in, basically, after step 1. Um, Step 2, get an itemized bill. This is a necessary step, and it does not come to you automatically. Your bill that you receive from the hospital is not itemized. It never is. If you receive a bill and it looks like they have everything on there, that means that there's more stuff on there that they left off. um, and hospitals will fight to not give you an itemized bill, almost absolutely guaranteed.
Yeah, but you think they do it on purpose, and then and we know they do it on purpose, but you think they like do the change, like instead of just $5,000, they do $4,867,
Oh, absolutely.
just so it looks, a little less, like you lie about a story. If the more details, it looks
I
more
noticed
true.
things. Yeah, no, I noticed things on my bill that were $0. They had a couple like little things on there that were like processing this paper or something, and it was 0. And I was like, I think that's there literally to throw you off. Like it. Why put it on the bill if it's nothing, and it's just part of their automated system or process? But
Just to
um,
fatigue your brain and eyes from reading, right?
Oh, absolutely. And there's other things that are shorthand or shorthand of shorthand. Like I said, the with 25 is something I really had to dig into because I didn't like you type in 25 of anything on a medical blue book site, it's going to come up with like 20, 30,000 results. So I had to Google that one and specifically look up with the slash, what does with 25 mean? So yeah, the itemized bill is going to be kind of tough, and it's going to be in Greek to start with.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Um,
it's gonna be in Portuguese, and it's gonna be a middle finger at the bottom.
yeah. 2 things that will serve you well. Well, first off, when you get your hospital bill, when you try to get an itemized bill, you have to call them for it, and they have to do it. It is legally they are obliged to give you an itemized bill when you call them. Make sure that you call them to do this, because every time you talk to them, it kind of updates your medical bill. Hospitals have a set time before they can send you to collections or lawsuit. So you have to keep interacting with them to reset that clock over and over again to show that you are doing the work and that you're not just ignoring your bill. Because legally, if they can prove that you haven't been on this, they will just send it off. They'll ruin your credit. They'll send it to collections. They'll send you to lawsuit. The first contact point, the first time you do this, it's going to be asking for an itemized bill. And if possible, when you are at the hospital, when you're at the ER, and they first make you sign a paper, get a copy. Mine had an estimate for $1,000. I really wish I had asked them for a copy of that, but I was in pain and I was dizzy, literally. So I had, I signed it and I forgot to ask for that back. And if I had it, I could probably prove under Texas's standards of transparency. It's called a good faith bill transparency. And I could have called them on that. I may have been able to get representation to say, oh, you're way above, if this could be considered a good faith bill. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it doesn't fall under it. So yeah, get that initial bill if you can. Get a copy. Get an itemized bill from the hospital later when you call them. That's going to be your first contact point. That's the first time you reset the clock on this, and then you get started with your homework. To take out the pain of this, you really should be getting onto what they have on this website is a medical code lookup, and they also have a healthcare blue book. We're going to have those in separate links for our show. This website I'm talking about, they also have it. And the reason why you need both of those is you need to look up. You need to be able to look up what they coded you as, and you also need to look up what the things they used on you cost. So we're going to do this in real time because I love editing our audio episodes. Cost of an IV bag.
$12. I was going to say $12. I think off the top of my head.
Yeah. The usual cost for saline is about $546 in billing, an extra $200 or $127 for the administration. The saline plus the plastic is about $12 or so. But yeah, obviously the hospital's going to pay more to get that. They're not going to pay $800, but they will bill you for about $546. And there's a great New York Times article I'm just seeing. It's called "How to Charge $546 for 6 liters of salt water," which is literally about this exact situation where they will charge you as much as possible for just giving you an IV solution. I also talked to an ER doctor